In 1566, two students at the University of Rostock got into a heated argument. They weren't fighting over a woman, nor money, nor insults. They were fighting over a mathematical formula. The argument got so intense that they settled it with a sword duel in the middle of a pitch-black night. One of those students walked away with his pride intact, but he left something behind on the grass. Most of his nose. For the next 35 years, that man wore a prosthetic made of brass, and legend says gold and silver for special occasions. It was glued to his face with a sticky herbal paste. But the man with the golden nose wasn't just a brawler. He was Tycho Brahe, the richest, weirdest, and arguably most important astronomer to ever live. He owned 1% of all the wealth in Denmark, lived in a castle on a private island, and kept a psychic dwarf under his dinner table. This is the story of the man who changed the universe, all while living in a literal fever dream. Born in 1546 to high nobility, Tycho was destined for a boring life in politics. But when he was 13, he witnessed a solar eclipse. What blew his mind wasn't just the sun disappearing, it was that people had predicted it would happen. To the young Tycho, this math was magic. It was a way to read the mind of God. By his early 20s, Tycho was fabulously wealthy and completely obsessed. But he wasn't a sit-in-the-library kind of scientist. He was a bombastic, arrogant aristocrat who lived like a madman. After his famous nose-chopping duel, he realized that if he wanted to understand the heavens, he needed better tools. At the time, astronomy was a mess. People were using data that was centuries old and wildly inaccurate. Tycho decided that he would be the one to fix it. The King of Denmark, Frederick II, was so impressed with Tycho that he gave him his own private island, Hven. There, Tycho built Uraniborg, the castle of Urania. It was the first true research institute in the world. It had a library, a printing press, and a massive alchemy laboratory in its basement, and even its own prison for unruly peasants. But given Tycho's personality, the daily life in the castle was strange. Tycho's constant companion was a dwarf named Jepp. Tycho was convinced that Jepp was a psychic and made him sit under the dinner table during every meal, occasionally tossing him scraps of food. Whenever Jepp spoke, Tycho would silence the room, believing the Jester was muttering prophecies. It was said that Jepp could predict the recovery or death of patients in Hven. Then there was his moose. Tycho didn't just have a normal pet. He had a pet moose that lived inside the castle and followed him like a golden retriever. Unfortunately, the moose shared Tycho's love for partying. During a dinner at a neighboring nobleman's house, the moose allegedly drank so much beer that it fell down a flight of stairs and died. Yes, the greatest astronomer of the age lost his best friend to a drunken staircase accident. Despite the psychic jesters and the drunken elk, Tycho was doing world-changing work. In 1572, he looked up and saw something impossible, a new star in the constellation Cassiopeia. At the time, everyone followed Aristotle's view that the heavens were perfect and unchangeable. A new star shouldn't exist. Tycho spent months measuring it with instruments he designed himself, massive quadrants and sextants that were the most accurate in the world. He proved the new star was further away than the moon. This shattered the idea of a fixed universe. He did the same with a comet in 1577, proving that space wasn't just made of solid crystal spheres, but was an open, changing void. He was doing all of this without a telescope. Galileo wouldn't use one for another 30 years. Tycho's eyes were so sharp and his instruments so precise that his data remains accurate to this day. Eventually, Tycho wore out his welcome in Denmark. He was too arrogant, too expensive, and he ignored the new king's orders. In 1599, he packed up his instruments and his jester and moved to Prague to work for the Holy Roman Emperor. It was here that the odd couple of science was formed. Tycho hired a brilliant, struggling young mathematician named Johannes Kepler. They hated each other. Tycho was a boisterous experimentalist who refused to share his best data. Kepler was a quiet theorist who desperately needed that data to prove his laws on planetary motion. Tycho treated Kepler like an understudy, while Kepler basically waited for Tycho to die so he could use his notebooks. It was a partnership born of friction that would eventually unlock the secrets of the solar system. In October of 1601, Tycho attended a royal banquet. In those days, it was considered the height of rudeness to leave the table before the host. Tycho, ever the polite nobleman, refused to excuse himself to use the bathroom despite drinking heavily. He returned home in agony. 11 days later, he was dead at the age of 54. For centuries, the story was that his bladder literally burst, but later, a darker theory emerged: mercury poisoning. Was he murdered by the King of Denmark, or maybe by a jealous Kepler? In 2010, Tycho was exhumed from his tomb in Prague. Scientists analyzed his beard hairs with modern technology. The result? No lethal mercury. Turns out the legend was mostly true. He likely died of a severe urinary infection or kidney failure brought on by that fateful dinner. He wrote his own epitaph, which said, "He lived like a sage and died like a fool." After Tycho's death, Kepler finally got his hands on the data. Using Tycho's measurements of Mars, Kepler proved the laws of planetary motion, that planets move in ellipses, not circles, launching modern physics. Tycho Brahe was a man of contradictions. He was a nobleman who fought for math, a scientist who believed in psychics, and a genius with a fake nose. He proved that the heavens could change, and in doing so, his work changed the world.